You hosted a historic Twitter Spaces last night. You started talking about Bitcoin because that's all you talk about online. And then I think Jack showed up and a bunch of people, and then the president of El Salvador showed up, and you talked, and you single-handedly turned around the coin because now it rallied today. But in your understanding and in your conversation with the president, what is the main benefit to this new law? How will it, in theory, help the economy and the people of the country?
Well, it was a fascinating time because the President Bukele, joined us on Twitter live as this law was being voted in. And we could actually hear the clapping and the votes from the parliamentary chamber to discuss with Bitcoiners on Twitter the merits of the law. The objective seems to be using Bitcoin as a actual medium of payment, medium of exchange, much more frictionless in the country, eliminating all capital gains taxes, which is, of course, a big impediment to actually using this thing as a currency. Potentially in service of making, Bitcoin-based remittances cheaper and less frictional, for instance. So that seems to be sort of the main thrust of the law.
What can we extrapolate then as far as what the future holds beyond El Salvador here? Do you think we'll see other, legitimate countries like El Salvador embrace this and other larger countries?
Well, following the Salvadorian news, a number of politicians in Latin America, many of them younger on the millennial side, signaled their affinity for Bitcoin as well, and made noises about potentially introducing similar ideas. We'll see if any of that actually transpires. We know that Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, stablecoins have very high penetration in places like Colombia and Argentina. Latin America is certainly no stranger to sovereign defaults or periods of high inflation or monetary repression. So we see high penetration there. There's certainly a class of policymakers that see an opportunity to gain favor by signaling their affinity. We'll see what happens. But this is El Salvador is the first non-pariah state to really legitimize and legalize Bitcoin usage in sort of its intended way. So it seems like a big sea change, frankly.
A big sea change that only though meant that we saw a 7% rally. You're still seeing Bitcoin in and of itself under pressure significantly off its highs that we saw previously in the year, Nick. Are you expecting the issue for El Salvador going forward is also the ongoing volatility within Bitcoin as well? Is there any point we're expecting that to just reduce a little bit so we see it more regularly used as a currency, not just by those that are suffering significant inflation or indeed seeing an issue with a hard currency peg?
It's hard to say. Bitcoin's volatility is seen to be as a natural consequence of the scarcity of the system. Of course, something like gold, which is similarly kind of a commodity, fixed in issuance, doesn't evidence such significant volatility. But Bitcoin is still early in its life, and very patchily adopted globally. And also in terms of El Salvador, it's a very small country. Foreign exchange reserves in the single-digit billions. The fund that the President Bukele was talking about establishing, which would hold a position in Bitcoin, he signaled that would be in kind of the $150 million range, so smaller than many kind of crypto hedge funds. So while this does represent sovereign adoption, it's not sovereign adoption by the largest sovereigns just yet. So we'll see. But in as much as using Bitcoin as a medium of payment or a bridge currency, you don't necessarily have to have exposure to the asset for a long period of time in order to sort of take advantage of its nice properties.
Nick, the Bitcoin community has a history of sort of getting excited about certain people and then they break your heart. Elon Musk is probably the most prominent one, and then he stabbed you in the back. Are you worried that the president won't have a commitment to Bitcoin per se, and next month it's and now we've asked the Ethereum Foundation to digitize health records and XRP to modernize our banking system, and then it'll just be a bunch of crypto buzzwords in a few weeks?
Well, what was notable about this bill that was passed was it specifically says Bitcoin. And all of the messaging is about the Lightning Network and about these payment systems built on top of Bitcoin. And there's relatively little messaging around cryptocurrency more generally. So the commitment in this case does seem to be regarding Bitcoin. Of course, who knows what's going to happen in the future. And in fact, there is going to be plenty of narratives out there around Bitcoiners consorting with someone that is perceived by many in the West as an authoritarian dictator. But any adoption of Bitcoin at the sovereign level is interesting and noteworthy. We don't shy away from that. There has been adoption of Bitcoin by other sovereigns that are considered pariah states, and nobody tries to hide that. So it's certainly interesting to watch this play out in real time.